Funding for the First Lady series is provided by Patreon supporters. To become a Patreon supporter, please click the link found in the description below. Dolly Payne was born on May 20th, 1768, in the Quaker settlement of New Garden, North Carolina, British America. In 1769, the Paynes moved to Virginia, and young Dolly grew up at her parents' plantation in rural Eastern Virginia and became deeply attached to her mother's family. Eventually, she had 3 sisters and 4 brothers. In 1783, following the end of the American Revolutionary War, John Payne emancipated his slaves, as did numerous slaveholders in the Upper South. When Dolly was 15, Payne moved his family to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, United States of America, where he went into business as a starch merchant. But the business had failed by 1791. This was seen as a weakness at his Quaker meetings, for which he was expelled. He died in October 1792, and Mary Payne initially made ends meet by opening a boarding house. But the next year she took her 2 youngest children, Mary and John, and moved to Western Virginia to live with her daughter Lucy and her new husband, George Steptoe Washington, a nephew of George Washington. In January 1790, Dolly Payne had married John Todd, a Quaker lawyer in Philadelphia. They quickly had 2 sons, John Payne and William Temple. In August 1793, a yellow fever epidemic broke out in Philadelphia, killing 5,019 people in 4 months. Dolly was hit particularly hard as her husband, son William, mother-in-law, and father-in-law all died. In addition to her grief, Dolly experienced, as many women did, the compounding effects of coverture law to her time of mourning. While her husband had left her money in his will, only men could be the executor of that money, and, as such, her husband's brother-in-law was the executor. Like many women, Dolly experienced this injustice as her brother-in-law withheld the funds that her husband had left to her. Despite Dolly's weakened position, after the death of most of her male relatives, she was still considered a beautiful woman and was living in the temporary capital of the United States, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Dolly caught the eye of James Madison, who then represented Virginia in the U.S. House of Representatives. In May 1794, Aaron Burr made the formal introduction between the young widow and James Madison. A brisk courtship followed, and by August, Dolly accepted his marriage proposal. They were married on September 15, 1794, and lived in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania for the next 3 years. In 1797, after 8 years in the House of Representatives, James Madison retired from politics. He returned with his family to Montpelier, the Madison family plantation in Orange County, Virginia. There they expanded the house and settled in. When Thomas Jefferson was elected as the 3rd President of the United States in 1800, he asked James Madison to serve as his Secretary of State. James Madison accepted and moved Dolly, her son John, his sister Anna, and their domestic slaves to Washington, D.C. on F Street. They took a large house as Dolly believed that entertaining would be important in the new capital. Dolly worked with the architect Benjamin Henry Latrobe to furnish the president's house, the first official residence built for the President of the United States. Dolly would become a crucial part of the Washington social circle, befriending the wives of numerous diplomats. In the approach to the 1808 presidential election, with Thomas Jefferson ready to retire, the Democratic Republic caucus nominated James Madison to succeed him. He was elected president, serving 2 terms from 1809 to 1817. And Dolly became the first presidential wife to be called the First Lady. Dolly helped to define the official functions by welcoming visitors in her drawing room and by decorating the executive mansion, as it was no longer called the presidential house. She was renowned for her social graces and hospitality, and contributed to her husband's popularity as president. She was the only First Lady given an honorary seat on the floor of Congress, and the first American to respond to a telegraph message. In 1812, James Madison was re-elected. This was the year the War of 1812 began against Great Britain. After the United States declared war in 1812 and attempted to invade Canada in 1813, a British force attacked Washington, D.C. in 1814. As it approached, the executive mansion staff hurriedly prepared to flee. Dolly Madison hurried away in her waiting carriage along with other families fleeing the city. They went to the Georgetown neighborhood, and the next day they crossed over the Potomac River into Virginia. When the danger receded after the British left Washington, D.C., a few days later, she returned to the capital to meet her husband. However, the rampant pillaging and systematic destruction had desolated much of the new city. As Congress began discussions over the construction of a new Capitol, Dolly and James moved into the Octagon House, located in the Foggy Bottom neighborhood of Washington, D.C. Dolly would then establish the Washington City Female Orphan Asylum. On April 6, 1817, a month after his retirement from the presidency, Dolly and James Madison returned to Montpelier Plantation in Orange County, Virginia. James Madison died at the plantation on June 28, 1836. Dolly remained there for a year. Her niece, Anna Payne, moved in with her, and Todd came for a lengthy stay. During this time, Dolly organized and copied her husband's papers. Congress authorized $55,000 as payment for editing and publishing 7 volumes of the Madison Papers. In the fall of 1837, Dolly returned to Washington, D.C. She and her sister Anna moved into a house bought by Anna and her husband, Richard Cutts, on Lafayette Square. While Dolly Madison was living in Washington, D.C., she tried to raise money by selling the rest of the presidential papers. Unable to find a buyer for the papers, she sold Montpelier Plantation, its remaining slaves, and the furnishings to pay off outstanding debts. In 1848, Congress agreed to buy the rest of James Madison's papers for the sum of $22,000. On February 28, 1844, Dolly Madison was with President John Tyler while aboard the USS Princeton when a cannon exploded in the process of being fired. While 6 were killed, President Tyler and Dolly Madison escaped unharmed. She died at her home in Washington, D.C. in 1849 at the age of 81. She was first buried in the Congressional Cemetery, but later was re-interred at Montpelier next to her husband.